Good morning and welcome to Love Every Moment, coming to you today from Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Today's verse is Titus 2:2. Older men are to be temperate, dignified, sensible, sound in faith, in love, and perseverance. Now, Paul is directing Titus to address certain generations within the church, older men, younger women, and so forth. And we are starting with older men. Now, the assumption is that these men are not yet elders, but if they are fulfilling what is here in verse 2, I think they're well on their way. So let's look at it. It says older men are to be temperate, dignified, and sensible. Now, I'm going to start with the temperate and the sensible, and we'll get that dignified in just a minute. Temperate and sensible are very, very similar, that they're not extreme to one side or the other, to the up, to the down, to the left, to the right, that they are moderate in their views and in their reactions to others. I like the Living Translation uses the word unruffled, right? That's a terrific one. So I notice as I'm getting older, I've been a Christian for close to 50 years now. I know that the Lord has taken me through a lot of lessons and has had me overcome certain issues in my life. Over 50 years, that should happen. And it can be easy for me to look at a younger Christian and say, well, I learned that lesson 30 years ago. Why can't you get your act together? And I can get all crotchety and impatient and so forth. And that's not what we want. I don't want to turn into a get off my lawn kind of Christian, right? We should be moderate and gentle in our views and reactions. As a negative example, I went to visit a church in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and I was greeted by some older fellow, and he asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Colorado." And immediately his demeanor changed, and he said with real venom in his voice, "Oh, you mean that liberal state?" And he turned around and left. I guess he doesn't like the politics of Colorado, but I didn't even say I agreed with that. It's just where I was from. And that's the greeting I got. It really upset me so much that I'll never set foot in that church again, even if he's gone. The church allowed that to happen. I guess the elders allowed this crotchety guy to be crotchety. I even wrote a negative report on it in Google, and as long as Google's around, that report's going to be there even after this fellow's passing. So it's going to mark the church a long time that they allowed this to go on. That's why it's so important to rein in the extremes in the church. Now, the one I skipped over is dignified. I remember as a younger man really looking up to those fellows in the church that I thought were dignified. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to emulate them. I wanted to ask them questions. How do you know when you're really in love? I mean, these are the things that you want to ask a dignified older man. And boy, we could sure use that in the church. Can I get an amen? The last part is sound in faith, love, and perseverance. Now, sound basically is the word healthy, and I like that description because I could be generally healthy. I can exercise and have a good diet and meditate and everything else, and yet once in a while, I'll still get sick. It's the same with the Christian experience. I can generally be on the right path, God's path for me, but I'll stumble, I'll sin. It happens, but it's, I'm still on the right path. That's what we want. And on the right path in faith, love, and perseverance. Faith, that we surrender everything to Him in love, that He could have my money, my politics, my diet, my clothing, my hobbies, my pastimes, anything He wants, He could have that. Okay, in love, that I love Him more than anyone else or anything else, and allow His love to flow through me. And in perseverance, which is actually very similar to the word patient or long-suffering, so that when I see these younger men or younger Christians who are struggling with some issue in their life that I may have conquered by now, that I will gently guide them in the way, hey, I went through that too. Let me show you how God got me through this, and so forth. It all boils down to love, and that's what should define the older men in the church. So let's choose to love every moment, because then we're going to love every moment. I'm your average Dutch. Hope you have a great week.